guys, so today we're going to be talking about Kizaru, that's right, Borsalino, one of the characters we haven't seen in a very long time, one of the few that seems to keep the Admiral agenda alive, and he's a character that, of course, holds a lot of weight in people's minds as one of the admirals that could come back and make a major change in the story. So, Kizaru is obviously a character that we haven't seen in a very, very long time, and one who has an unexpectedly anticipated return. So, with Borsalino and his abilities, there's a lot of things going on because he does, in fact, embody light, which I think is one of the coolest techniques in the series, but he does, in fact, have a lot of hype surrounding him, and you know where that comes from. Of course, that's going to be his speed. Now, someone that has been seen to make a huge comparison to him is Sanji, of course, because of the way he kicks, he deflects, responds, and is a speed-based character. He does, in fact, garner a lot of attention in that regard. But what we're going to take a look at, of course, and first off, is going to be the speed of Kizaru. Now, Kizaru does have quite a few techniques under his belt, as you would expect from someone with one of the coolest abilities in the series, but his speed, of course, is going to be analyzed in a way where we can actually come to take a look at how does he hold up compared to more recent and relevant feats in the series. Now, when we look at Kizaru, the last time we saw him was around Saba Odi, and of course, his abilities were, and his feats that he showed were phasing through a bullet. That's right, bullet timing. And this is a speed feat that has been well eclipsed since its first activity. And so when we take a look at this, does he really stand up to more current characters? Now, this bullet timing obviously isn't much of an impressive feat, but as we've started to progress, we can start to see that he does also keep up and is able to outspeed Basil Hawkins, which in early Basil Hawkins isn't that impressive because we see him later and more recently in Wano, and even then we see characters that are about mid-tier kind of, beating up on Basil. And so in this way, Kizaru doesn't really have many impressive feats when it comes to speed. He does, of course, move at light speed, but it seems like that has been eclipsed as far as a speed barrier for some time. And I'd argue even in Dressrosa, there are characters, of course, moving faster than that. And Gear 4 Luffy, with his abilities, seem to be on that tier, right? So when we look at more recent feats, does Luffy eclipse these abilities? And is Kizaru in the speed department going to make an impact? Now, there are a few ways we can look at this. And the more obvious one is that Luffy in base might even be faster than this. Even Rob Lucci with amps, of course, might even be faster than this. And so, is Kizaru really going to keep up in speed? There's a question here as to whether the top tiers in the Straw Hats and other fighters are going to be able to really even put up a reasonable fight with Kizaru, because they might just dog walk him in a very quick scene. So, does he really stack up to some of the lower or second tier characters like Zoro, Sanji, etc.? Now, I'm not sure where explicitly Sanji scales with respect to light speed, although he is performing at a much higher rate than he would even back in Dressrosa and of course in Saba Odi. So it seems like Sanji might be the matchup for Kizaru, and what we would have to expect is Kizaru actually gaining a massive amp from his earlier feats. Now, I'm not sure exactly how he's going to be amped up, because we've seen Oda actually amp characters like Rob Lucci with his awakening up to Gear 5 level, which of course is a huge, huge jump from the last time we see Rob Lucci in any combat sense. So the main thing, and that actually may be a recurring thing here with Kizaru. So it is possible, but if Kizaru wants to keep up with these high tier characters like Luffy, Zoro, Lucci, etc., he would need a massive, massive bump from what he was originally doing. And that is something I think Oda is willing to give him to keep the Admirals relevant. So I believe it's more about narrative than actual scaling, but he may actually be receiving that bump. Now, if he doesn't do that, Kizaru gets massively eclipsed from the last time we saw him, right? And there's no indication that he's gotten to a level where he would keep up with these higher tier characters. So that's kind of the saving grace, is that the author may be willing to move him up in a power scaling notion to keep him relevant, and the admirals in some sense, right? Now, what we can also look at is some of the AP of these guys, and Kizaru isn't necessarily impressive for his AP and attack speed or power, but what we see from him, of course, is the fact that he has his light sword, which is pretty powerful. He can blow up large trees, and he can his major feat, but with three admirals, is stopping Oldbeard. Right now, with three other admirals, he's able to stop Oldbeard's earthquake, but it's not something that is necessarily impressive. If it takes three admirals to stop one old dying Yonko, that is not an impressive feat. And if it were to currently be scaled, he would get dog walked. Now we can look at other Yonko like Shanks, Luffy, Blackbeard, even relatively former Yonko, Kaido, and Big Mom. They dog walk Oldbeard. They put him in the biggest pack and smoke him, right? There's not much going on as far as any level of relativity between those characters. And so it's hard to actually say that these guys are going to be relative in any way as far as AP. So the saving grace of Kizaru is if he gets his abilities up, his speed-wise abilities, that will put him on a level where he may be able to compete, right? Because he does have the AP to damage people if he can blitz them, right? Or if he's cutting corners and getting around them or faster, or blinding them in some way to help increase his speed in some combat sense, right? So outside of that, unless Kizaru gets a major bump, there's nothing that's really going to put him above anyone, because everyone has Haki now, right? The thing that made him so dangerous was he was a Logia, and the rest of the admirals, of course, they were Logias who really didn't have a counter because people's Haki was so weak. But even Kobe now could damage the admirals, right? And with a significant punch. So they don't have the same advantages in durability and AP they once did. So they really need to rely on their speed to get around that. And if their Haki hasn't gotten stronger, which I imagine it will to keep them relevant, they're done for. They have no way to respond to any of Luffy's attacks. Zoro would cut them to ribbons. Sanji honestly might even beat them. And that's really where they scale at this point. Now, we're going to see what Oda's willing to do. We're going to see how the story progresses. But as of right now, they don't really scale with respect to the rest of the Yonko level characters, and even a tier below that, right? The Katakuris, the Zoros, etc. So, again, we'll see how things develop in the next few chapters. But as of right now, the Yonko are over the Admirals, and Kizaru is still not relevant. Thank you for watching. Please come back, and we'll have a new video out for you soon.